that type of day when, no technology can help you, when you're rushing from Mumbai on probably a 7 o'clock flight, thinking you will make it on time here for a 12 o'clock presentation, probably, and with all the things going on the T1 airport chaos and things like that, your flight is on the air for close to an hour and you land up here, and then you find your laptop on which you're probably working on your last few slides, you leave it somewhere, right? So, and then you try to get in. But anyway, thanks so much. Finally could make it on time. And then after all, the team is, getting the things ready. I'm sure it has been an enlightening session around attack, mitigation, defense, so many things happening on the cyber world. It's a privilege to be here. Prospectively, I'll take this 30 seconds, probably till the time the team fixes it. As a student of this domain from last, 2 decades or more, I keep on thinking my still 5 o'clock timing doesn't go off in terms of learning, unlearning, so many things, so many complexities that are there in terms of the cyber domain, which can be addressed, simplified, and now I see a shining on the horizon where we call it AI, right? And probably it is there to simplify our jobs, simplify our mundane tasks in general. I was just looking at the last slide, talking about it in perspective. I think if the things are done, ready, possible, is it too encrypted? So, I represent the Cisco cybersecurity division. And as I said, over the years, it has been a journey to learn so many things and so many things evolving. Yep, there it is. No, not this one. It is called VAR, V-A-R. You need to rush more, and also to stay between you and the lunch, probably. Finally, we get it, okay? So, from my perspective, from the way I did not want it to keep, my presentations would not be around any product, technology, Cisco marketing of its product, as I've been given 15 odd minutes. I wanted to keep it contextual in terms of, and simplified as much I can, in terms of what's happening on the threat landscape. Few things are known in perspective. I was given an opportunity to talk about emerging trends. You've been hearing this, right? I'm talking about the last 15 days. 15 days where the banks are on top vigil as per the regulator. We are seeing a coordinated cyber attack on our FSI segment at the moment. We are already seeing the number of cyber attacks in the last 6 months have grown exponential in terms, and in fact, India becomes the #2 target for our adversaries in terms. I'm sure what we heard in Indonesia some time back is also a resonance of what's happening from an Indian economy perspective. Rising economies, rising GDPs would result in these type of attacks in general on the infrastructure perspective. And then again, we recently saw what happened in terms of the BSNL data breach, and this can result into different, I would say, TPPs and others, in terms of how it can be, exploited in perspective. These are the very recent threats on our infrastructure perspective, and resilience becomes a top priority for most of the cyber practitioners to achieve that. Underprepared and overconfident companies. We still hear that. There has been a survey from Cisco in 2023 and early 24, you can call it, which talks about what's the state or the mindset of organizations when it comes to adopting cybersecurity solutions in general. connected, complex, and complicated, right? And I'll give you a perspective on how it is, how easier it is when we talk about it, and how complex it is on the underlining it. So when we say connected, we all understand today we have users, we have got them connected from various modes and methods in perspective through various, I would say, devices in general, and hybrid workforce is definitely a part of our business to a certain extent. Today, network is borderless, as we call it. Network starts from where the user is. We have got our, I would say, applications, which are no more in a concept called private data center. They are totally, hybrid in nature, and they are on a public platform also, which was probably not a thought maybe 5 years back in general. And as we see, the users and devices in a hybrid world are increasing exponentially. And if you see, there are definitely various adoptions of technologies on security to probably ensure the best secure connectivity to the users in this probably very complex scenario, as we call it. It is so simple as it looks from an outlook. A user connecting to an application, and the application residing anywhere in any type of, I would say, workload, residing anywhere in any type of platform or data center across. But the underlying, I would say, access or connectivity crosses through various untrusted, trusted networks across. Some of them are encrypted in nature, some of them are non-encrypted, as we all know. So the complexities around this access is very high. And there are different protocols and technologies which result into. So I'll not get into the details, but what it means is the complexity is on the rise. When you want to protect everything, everywhere, every time, you prospectively do not know who and where, whom are you protecting. It could be anyone. We are seeing businesses are ecosystem, where they are like, third parties which are connected to our business using APIs and other. How many companies really follow a process or a policy around third-party vendor adoption or API connectivity to ensure the right security and the practices adopted? Anywhere, we already know the users today are accessing from their private devices, from any network in terms, are we really looking at contextual access to their data? If the user changes his access from a trusted Wi-Fi network into an office, on the fly, on the move, into an untrusted network or a Wi-Fi, are we looking at the contextual data in terms of access and putting the right guardrails in terms of giving him access to the applications? And again, as I said, at any time, prospectively, that the user wants to access. So complexity in this amplified digitization is probably very high. The pace in which we are looking at digitization has been exponential. And in this complexity, where the entire perspective starts, there is definitely, we call it security depth in terms of patching, in terms of, staying resilient. Because many a times you want to ensure patching, there is a public infrastructure platform, there is a very critical application which is business dependent, and you would have those, depth in security in terms of, yes, we'll patch only 1 or 2 patches which are more critical prospectively. So the complexity also arises mainly after this pandemic, where we have seen more than 30 odd vendors. If you do an odd survey, the best of ITS companies in our country today have more than 12 or 13 endpoints, right? And the one project that they are following is consolidation of endpoints. एक user के laptop पे 15-20 करीबन, like I'm saying, there are close to 12 to 13 endpoint clients. That's because there are a number of cybersecurity vendors in terms of any organizations have increased. The tools have increased. When the tools have increased, definitely there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of fatigue which the users undergo in general. So, and upon that, to amplify the shortage of cybersecurity manpower, which we all are going through, right? And the industry is currently in a deficit of nothing less than 25 lakh of cybersecurity professionals on an yearly basis, So, complexity in terms of the number of tools, number of, I would say, lack of skilled resources is just amplifying this. And if you look at it, in the last 12 months prospectively, the attacks which have happened have risen exponentially when it comes about supply chain, when it comes about credential stuffing, and malware and phishing have become still the number 1, number 2 attacks. The main parameter here to talk about, which in my couple of other slides, which I will touch base upon, is the weakest link in cybersecurity. We call about people, processes, and technology. people still remains the most weakest link, and it is the most targeted link still today, which comes out of most of the surveys, whether it is the Cisco's Business Outlook survey or whether you look at the Talos report, which I'll be talking about. Most of these different type of attack vectors are targeted towards these users. And if you see in my first slide, the one thing that's commonly coming out is insider attacks. And these insider attacks are not because of just the users willingly participating in the entire breach process, but it is also to do in terms of the different type of advanced targeted attacks that we are seeing towards the user, and we will talk about some of them. Talos is Cisco's threat intelligence team, which does a continuous, I would say, intelligence gathering, AI ML-based analysis of these different telemetries that it gets, because I think any AI is good till the time it has got if you have to be a #1 AI company, you have to be a #1 data company. It's all about how do you collect the telemetry, how much telemetry do you get, how many data sets you get to analyze in general. And Talos is one research organization which gives this threat feeds. It's a threat intel organization, and there is a quarterly survey which comes out. In fact, a quarter back, we could see the healthcare, in fact, last year, the healthcare being the most targeted, segment among all in perspective. This has gone up to manufacturing at the moment. And manufacturing, typically talking about, encompasses those different, I would say, utilities and other type of companies which are having top concerns at the moment in terms of OT security. And one discussion around in the industry here in the North market is probably to have something on the OT SOC space, which not only encompasses the IT but the OT prospectively, but some companies also look at only having OT in general. And still there is to be a standard which needs to be formulated, as I understand. But again, manufacturing becomes the topmost, I would say, segment of attack. BEC, business email compromise, as I would say, old as it looks in sounding, we have heard this earlier, still is the topmost vector of attack. And this has become much more advanced. We'll talk about it. Similarly, ransomware and ransomware as a service modules that are operating in the form of commodity loaders is also a very area of aspect, because we know what are the international turbulences which are happening. Some of these adversaries have taken stands in terms of different sides, and that's all happens in a geopolitical turbulence which is there. And this also is impacting our landscape in general. A BEC attack, as you can see very commonly, and I think few of your organizations would have been impacted, or maybe your CEO or CFO would have complained of a spoof attack happening in general, whereby an email comes from a very genuinely looking email ID, at times even internally. Because when we are talking about a business impersonation attack, the identity also has to be compromised at times. I'm talking about the username, password, the mailbox, which helps the adversary to move lateral into an organization, into other email accounts, correct? I'll not get into the entire TPP of it, but I hope the perspective is the account getting compromised, the emails looking very genuine, actually fraudulent, and then people ending up transferring money or lending support in general. So this is an area which is on a rapid rise. Advanced phishing, as they call it. Spear phishing, as may be the other word. And how do we probably address that? Many organizations would have come with technologies. We already have technologies which do north-south email scanning in our corporate. But what about east-west? Mailbox to mailbox in a corporate scenario. I'm not sure how many organizations would have thought about it, because today the phishing attacks are AI-enabled. We need to look at, basically our defenses in terms of how we are, probably keeping up in pace with those type of attacks in general. So it delivers the email as a legitimate email. I'll not get into detail in the essence of time. It also evades our DMARC and DKIM and other type of technologies on an email security solution perspective. Persistent in nature, they have the database of the organization. They know the organization chart. They get sometimes with the help of identity, they get the entire address book, and then they know which person, where it is, and how to be targeted in general. Valid accounts, as I said, many users today still synchronize their username, password, corporates with the browsers. Browser has an option, it prompts you, do you want to save this password? And then you have browser-based vulnerabilities, which may also help you in extracting those valid credentials in general. So techniques are many, but I'm just trying to say valid account infection or probably compromise of the identity is another important source of those attacks. The third one is also very critical. Many of you in your organization would have also implemented MFAs. There is definitely what we are seeing among users is an MFA fatigue also. Every application, you have a username, password, and then an MFA prompt coming. Ab user itna pareshan ho jata hai, wo yes hi bol deta hai. Or probably sometimes we are seeing issues like what I talked about BSNL data compromise in general. If there is a SIM cloning possible, then probably the OTP coming onto your systems will also be possibly breached, correct? Because they can be transferred onto another system somewhere. And if you don't have OTP-based MFAs, you have push-based MFAs, there is still a possibility of MFA fatigue that we are seeing in users, in spite of the fact that you may have a suspicious, you may have multiple prompts coming and the user will say, yaar, main to kar nahi raha, but kya hai, pata nahi, chalo, approve, daba dete hain, and then you are basically giving the access. Your username and password is compromised. You go to the dark web, you can find data, you may not find data, but again, those are the areas where you will see the things coming up big time. Another important area, I'm sure the experts would have touched during the day, is AI deepfake and BEC. Again, BEC I spoke about, but AI deepfake is another big concern that people are seeing. I've been hearing in my previous conversations with the practitioners that they have got calls over WhatsApp whereby a CEO is talking to a CFO or a CEO and asking for some sort of immediate action. But actually, it is not the CEO who's calling. Many corporates may miss adopting a very official and formal communication channels in general. There are tools, there are technologies in terms of, you have got corporate messaging systems which can be adopted to avoid that type of scenario. There are other techniques also which you can basically look into in general, but then this is another area which is going on the rise, whereby again user awareness is another area of concern. So if you're talking about resilience, which is cyber resilience is today business resilience, it can't be looked from a silos perspective. It has to be a connected approach, a platform approach. Your tools need to be integrated in general. Your tools need to take those remediation in an automated way, which is not human dependent in perspective. So cyber resilience, and importantly, 2 minutes more probably, 2 or 3 minutes. Importantly, if we are looking at cyber resilience, it is very important to look at the zero trust architecture or framework. Nothing new, old wine in a new bottle as we call it, but the NIST framework, this is a slide from the NIST framework 800 standard, which is very, very simple and easy. This is the identity, device, network, application, and data on which your company stands. Your digital power stands. And these pillars are on the foundations of visibility, analytics, orchestration, and governance. I hope you all agree. If you strengthen controls around all this area, user area, network area, device area, what type of device is he accessing? Am I checking his posture or not? Is he updated with the latest patch or not? Is my user following the right risk assessment that you're doing for the user when he's accessing? Is your network having the right, I would say, access control so that there is no lateral movement in case of a compromise? Even if the user's posture changes, what type of real-time change I'm doing in terms of the access? Are we adopting that or not? So talking about it in a few words, a zero trust is a continuous process. It can't be just like, I would say, a policy that you have adopted. It has to be continuous, it has to be connected, it has to be orchestrated in nature if you want to achieve the true principles of zero trust. From a Cisco parlance perspective, this is the only one slide that I have typically talking about the reference architecture. Right from the user, you will have different controls moving into the network, and network can be of any size and shape. We all understand network can be on the cloud, network can be OT based, like for a manufacturing company, network can be for a branch, network can be for a factory and others. So we are talking about controls in the network. What are those controls that you adopt? Typically firewall. Endpoint, typically an antivirus. But there are more controls granularly to be needed to reduce the attack surface, the blast attack surface. And if you see from the network right to the workload security, Again, API security, CNAP tools that you have for visibility in terms of micro-segmentation is another important key area of granularity that you will adopt in terms. And on top of it, visibility and intelligence, automation for our SOC systems. अब SOC आज के दिन में सिर्फ visibility के लिए नहीं रह गया और सिर्फ response के लिए नहीं रह गया. उसका काम remediation और automation है big time. And आप देख रहे हैं हर vendor और हर acronym आज एक R के साथ आ रहा है. XDR, EDR, NDR, IDPR. The R is around the response. Thank you so much. My last slide was around AI. I wanted to touch base a bit around AI. Without AI, today, I think achieving a very resilient cyber security landscape would not be possible. And AI stands on the fundamentals of assist, augment, and automate. And as I said, your LLMs and others, the gentleman before me also was talking about it. It was a classic example of AI-based SOC adoption. And as you know, Cisco has the prowess with Splunk, XDR, and other solutions unified. What you saw here is the reduction of any manual intervention, completely automated, and the cyber resilience that I was talking, that if the machines are infected, they are back online without our people getting into action in terms to get things up and running. The last snapshot was taken. It was again restored back. The action was taken. Honeypots was set up and things like that. So a bit on the automation and the AI side of it. Thank you so much. Yeah.